Sled's starting to look like something. I got my exhaust and my muffler in. So go ahead and we'll start modifying that and show you how we do it. So I'm going to start with the exhaust in here. And we're going to have to do the same thing we basically did with the air intake. We just have to cut little angles on it and try to get this thing to bend up and over. And eventually it's going to end up running out over here. But we have to keep it away from the belts as much as possible. So we're going to start with one cut. Going to start here and kind of go at a little bit of an angle, and then we'll cut on the other piece. We'll cut a little bit of an angle, and we'll just keep working our way over until we get up and around the valve cover, and then eventually out over here. I'm going to stick that right in there, and then I'm just going to try and mark the orientation of the angle like that. So it's going to be similar to that. I'm going to try to keep them at like around 22 and a half degrees. The key is going to be to start the cut with the whiz wheel and carry it straight through so that the surface is on one flat plane. That way when I cut the next piece, should fit nice and tight, and it'll make welding it a heck of a lot easier than trying to weld any gaps. So I had the first cut made. You want to keep that short point of that first cut like maybe, a good 5/16, quarter of an inch away from that edge, because that gives you room to get the welder in there. But I was talking about keeping that nice and tight like that. You want to make sure your cuts fit like that. And then the cut that came off, this was this way. So I made the cut, and I tried to cut all the way through it in one shot. That way the blade doesn't, wander this way or that way. It just goes straight through, and then it makes a much better fit on the other end when you're trying to weld it together. So what I have to do now is bolt this in. And this exhaust comes with these bolts, so you pull the studs out and these go in. Actually, going to grab the impact gun and make this a little quicker. You got to keep taking this in and taking it out. So what I'm going to do is just try to make a cut. I'm going to take this cut and call this, I'm going to call this point here the shortest of the short point. So we're going to try to make another piece right down to a point and back this way. So that's, we're going to cut that wedge piece off and weld that right in. So this is the wedge piece that I just cut. And you can see which side you see that that side came from that. And then the angle on this side, if you look at it and you try to put it together, it's actually too big. So this angle here will fit this better down here. And then this angle here will fit better there because this is the one that came off of that cut. That's how it was, something like that. That's how it was cut. So that this side and this side are going to match up the outside diameter all the way around the weld you're going to do. So you want to keep the orientation or the two angles together that got cut at the same time, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to tack this piece here right in there in place, and then I'm just going to keep working my way around until I get up around the valve cover. So I got the first piece tacked in. Like I said, I'm just going to keep pulling these off and putting them back in. It looks like I got a little welding slag inside the hex head. So that's what the first one's going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a few more tack welds in that so it stays together. And then we'll just continue on. Should get a little easier from here on in because we kind of made that really sharp turn. The only problem is what I have to do now is I actually have to take this cut this way. Like that, and then this side's going to go kind of like that. And that'll bring me back flush over here all the way around, and it'll get me curving this way, which is where I want to go. So I made the cut, and it's almost the same angle as the piece, the corresponding piece down here, because when I put it up to it, you want to make sure that you're kind of flush all the way around here so you have basically the same diameter tube, because every time you change the angle, if you make a steeper angle on the cut, you actually end up with a wider diameter that you have to meet up with down here. So I said you got to keep the angles kind of consistent. Like this one fits pretty good. So what we're going to do is just hold it right there. Didn't hold so well, did it? There's really no right or wrong on this. You just kind of trying to make it bend up and around to eventually get it over here to come out over here where you want it. So this is what I have so far. I'm trying to keep the angle, the inside here, as tight as possible, but still allow me enough room to get in there and weld and then grind it out after if I have to. At this point, I'm just kind of going around and tack welding it all for now. I think I'm going to make one more cut. The pipe is getting hot. I'm going to make one more cut. Like that angle there. So this is what I have. I made 3 cuts. So 1 cut, 2 cut, 3 cuts. So that should get you around. Could have made this one taking a little bit more off the long point, and that would have made this one here a little bit wider and it would have been more uniform. But in the end, it all gets covered with exhaust tape anyway. So as long as it's strong enough to hold and the air flows through it fine, that's kind of what you're looking for. So we're going to tack that back in. We're going to all right. So I have that there. I already made the cut in this pipe, but it was originally like that. So what I did is I just cut it off square, and I'm just going to roll it. And then I picked up a piece of 1-inch black pipe from Lowe's, and it's already threaded for the end. So this is going to be what's going to finish this whole thing. So this is going to go here, and then this black pipe's going to get cut bare, and that'll be how we get out to the final point over here. Right, so I lined everything up, put the muffler on, and fit everything in. Got my muffler as far in this way as possible. And now it's just a matter of tack welding this, so I need to hold it there. Wanted to turn it just a little bit. You can't leave well enough alone. All right. All right. Get that all done, all welded up. It's pretty sturdy. You can see it shakes the whole motor. The other thing we're going to have to do is I'm going to make a bracket that goes from here and ties into the exhaust up here. That'll give it an extra leg. That way it's not going to break. Because after a while, that vibration and the amount that exhaust just kind of hangs there, the weld is going to end up breaking over here. So just start off with like a piece of 1.25 inch. I think it's 3/16 inch steel. Drill the hole in it. I'm going to mount it right on top of the motor mount. And I'm going to bolt that back down. And then down here, we're going to extend the leg from here to somewhere right about there in the on the exhaust pipe. I got a piece of 1/2 inch steel. It was actually from the sway bar on the snowmobile. So, and I cut like a 15-degree angle on it right there. So what I'm going to do is put that up inside there, and right on that piece of steel that I drilled the hole in, and I bolted to the motor mount. I'm just going to weld it right in there. So I have this piece made up. And it's going to go right in there. Put the washer and the bolt on there. Oh, hot, hot. It's bolted in there nice and tight. Now I can go ahead and weld this up underneath here. And then hopefully I can pull the whole thing off, because this tab has to come out this way, and the exhaust has to come out the same way. So if you do the exhaust and you do build this extra brace, you definitely need to make sure that you get rid of the studs for the exhaust manifold and use the ones that they supply. Otherwise, you'll never get that out. All right, so I get this tacked in up underneath here. And now we're going to see if the whole thing will come out. If I just wasted my time. All right, cool. There we go. All comes out in one piece. Couple things. This, I didn't mention anything about this. This is just another little air filter I got off Amazon. And it covers the crankcase pressure relief. It usually goes into the air box. Then once you get rid of the air box, there's a big gaping hole there. So that's that. Yeah, again, you want to make sure you get rid of the studs in the exhaust manifold. And the other thing I wanted to say about the exhaust manifold is the 459 and the 420 are not the same size. So when you get that exhaust, you need to make sure that you get the exhaust for the 459, because some of the parts are interchangeable between the 420 and 459, but the exhaust is not. All right. So this hood is off the 1990 Polaris that I did. It's a little bit different. This one doesn't quite go all the way down. And the main reason for that is these mounts right here for the gas tank were actually, you can unbolt these on the prior two motors that I used, but they changed the design on it, so now those are in there. I could just cut them off and probably go with the same measurements as this hood here, but I think I'm going to leave them on, because if you ever have to take the motor back for anything, you know, obviously if it's cut, they probably won't take it. So we're going to go ahead and kind of start from scratch on this one. And the first thing I'm going to do is make up this front panel. Front panel here. So I'm going to get a measurement on it. 19. So from this inside corner to that inside corner, it's 19 and a half, but I have plenty of room in this channel to make it a little bit shorter. That way it's, you're not fighting it trying to get it in. It's 19 and a half, so I'm actually going to make it 19 and a quarter. And I have a piece that I've rough cut. This piece here is 30 by 12. So what I'm going to do is measure over 19 and a quarter, make a cut. So I took the muffler off here just to get it out of the way for now. We're going to have to cut around it later, but it's easier to do this without the muffler in the way. So I'm going to put this in here, and this piece I have is a rough cut, is 30 by 18. And I want to try to bevel everything, you know, taper everything in this way, and I'm going to taper that in that way. It's just going to make it look way more cool. So the determining point on how far I can taper this in is the air filter. So right there, the air filter is actually hitting the back side of the plywood. So that's kind of going to be my angle. So I'm just going to, see this. I'm just going to take my pencil and run it right on there. That's going to be the angle that I'm going to cut on that piece. What I'll actually do, you can see how it's running off up here. I'm just going to bring it back to there and carry it straight across. So the darker line is going to be the one I'm going to cut. So whatever this angle is here, I'm use my speed square to figure that out. It's like a 7-degree angle. Going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to bevel it back like that. But I'm going to keep this measurement here and this here, 19 and a quarter. That's going to be the long point on the bottom edge of that front panel. I'm just going to use this jig that I made. It's basically a fest tool made out of plywood. And you put the saw right on there, and then you just run the edge of the table right along there. So all you have to do is put this edge right on your line, clamp it down, and then you just run your saw down and you get a nice straight cut. Because when it comes time to start putting this together, obviously the tighter the better. That way the glue's going to do a much better job of holding things together. All right. So you can see my front piece. It's resting right up against the starter. And then you can see I got the two angles on the front. It kind of tapers up. So what I want to do, I'm going to put that piece right in there and overlap that other piece. And I'm going to do the same thing when I scribe this angle. But what I'm actually going to do is just pull it off the starter a little bit. It doesn't have to be tight. So once I get that line there, that's my angle. So I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the left side of the snowmobile as well. All right, so this is what I do with the jig. Once I have my line right there, I'm actually going to start the cut down here, so it's going to be back from the line a little bit. So I'll just parallel the pencil line. All you have to do is line this edge up with your line. So this would be the new line. You take one clamp, put it right on there. Make sure you're on your line. And all you have to do, put your saw on there, just hold the other end of your jig, just run it through. You get a nice straight line every time. All I'm going to do is take the piece that I just cut, lay it over the piece for the other side, flush up the bottom, and just draw a line. That way your left and your right side are exactly the same. And again, you just put this right on there, clamp one end, and rip it. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to figure out where the tallest point on this is going to be, and then it's going to taper down this way, just like this one does. The way we're going to figure that out, we're going to come around to the inside. First, I'm going to show you a little trick. So I'm just going to take a piece of masking tape. I always fold the end in just a little bit. Makes it easy to take it off after. I'm just going to put it on like that. You just got to pull it tight. Rub it in there. And that'll hold that piece from flopping around all over the place while you're trying to mark the inside. That'll hold that there. We want to come around the inside. I'm just going to take a piece of scrap, put it in there kind of where I think the angle is going to be, because it's going to go this way, and then it's going to go that way as well. And it looks like the taller section is this side because of this, which this is actually coming off. I can just pull that right off. All right, so I got it laid in there. I'm going to bring it down until it hits that. Hits this here, and then from there you can kind of figure out, if you want to go a little higher with it, a little lower, but you got to remember that brace is right there. So wherever you go here, just bring it up a little bit, and then just draw a line right there. And then right where your center mark is, measure down. That's 1 3/8. So I'm going to come over here, mark down 1 3/8. Actually, you know what? I think I want to go a little lower on this. So I'll come back in here. And bring it a little less of a taper. So yeah, that'll look better. So instead of being like this, it's going to be like that. So I'll mark it right about there. And the other thing is mark this edge here too. So it's going to be about 2.5. So I'm going to mark this down here at 2.5. And then this mark over here, I did this, I put it on that 2.5 mark. And I have this mark here. I'm going to actually transfer that around to the front side. Pull the tape off. And I'm going to connect this point, the mark that I transferred around to the front, and then this point, and I'm just going to connect those two lines. All right, so I have the line there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure up off the bottom from here to that, and then I'm just going to do the same thing on that side. So it's 7 7/8. And I'm going to come up 7 7/8 on this side. I'm going to take that new mark there and connect it to this mark here. So it's going to go straight down this way. And there it is. Come back here. Drop it right in there. Take our tape. Tape it up. So now we have to determine how high up this way we're coming with the panel. So I think the determining factor on that is going to be the clutch, the secondary. I think that's definitely higher than the it's about the same height as the intake, but a little bit higher. So what I'm going to do is again take the board, put in here a little bit of an angle. Piece. I need a piece that's a little bit longer. All right, so this surface here, this edge here, is going to be the plane that this tapers to. So I needed a longer piece so that I could keep it tight there, and then just kind of lay it in there. Right now it's sitting right on top of the secondary, but I don't want it to, so I'm going to pick it up a little bit. maybe about, I don't know, like an inch. And I'm just going to mark it right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is from this mark right here, I'm going to connect the dots to this mark right here, right where these two intersect. And I'm going to draw a line and cut it. And then I'm going to lay it down on this side and trace it out so it's exactly the same thing. All right. That's what we got so far. And you got to make sure when you tape these up that you do this side and that side the same. So this plywood actually overlaps this piece. So you want to make sure that this plywood overlaps the side piece on the other side too when you put it together. So now we need to figure out the top. It's like I said, it's pretty tight in there. You know, the cold air intake's kind of hit, but that's not a big deal. You got a little space between the drive shaft on this secondary clutch, and then you got room on the clutch down there as well. So that'll be good. And then the starter as well. You get some room there. I mean, it's going to bend anyway, so if it does hit something, it's not a huge deal. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cut a piece for the top. I'm going to make this one piece. So it has to be a little long. I'm going to say 4 inches long, just to be safe. So I'm going to make it 22. Just hold it at 4 inches and measure, and you get 22. And then, well, actually, I'm going to make it what the top is going to be. So 4 inches, 27. So I'm actually going to go 29. 29 by 29. All right, so I got my 29 by 29 inch piece. And I did is I took a straight edge and I went right down the center. And I scored utility knives like this. Actually, got to go a little bit deeper anyway. But I would use a straight edge, but I've already cut deep enough with the knife so it'll follow the edge. Then you don't want to cut all the way through it. You want to cut it just enough. See where it's bubbling? It's bubbling it back a little bit right there. So I got to go a little deeper right there. All right, perfect. So what that's going to do is it's going to give you that angle, but you're also not going to have to do it in two pieces at the top, which makes it a lot simpler. Now what I'm going to do, lay this right on top and go all the way up to the bars, the handlebars. Now's the time, like I'm looking at this here, so you got to determine whether or not you want to, if you want to take this from here to there after, because you're going to cut all this stuff to a finished length afterwards. So if that's the line you like, then this is back far enough. Obviously, you get the handlebars, so here. So if you wanted to cut this at a little bit of an angle, you could actually move the whole thing back, and then this point here would come out to here, and you'd still get around the bars. Let's see what the other side looks like. Yeah, because I'm going to be cutting this. I'm going to be cutting it back here somewhere. So yeah, I think it's back far enough. I think I'm actually going to move it forward just a little bit so it doesn't interfere with anything on the handlebars. So if I like that there, want to double check the bottom. Make sure you're tight. Make sure that that's tight, right on that center line. And you do this part. Like that. So if that's tight there, and then you put this center line right on your handlebars, and you can line it right up to the center of the stem. Check that again. Then you go ahead and just put a mark underneath. You get a mark underneath there. And then you got to get a mark up here on either side. So you want to find out which side is actually sticking out the furthest. This way? Is this one out further or is that one out further? So the way I'll do that is I'll just hold my tape. I'll center it right on that. Actually put it right on this center mark here if that's still centered with the handlebars. And measure over. That one's 11 1/8. And this one is 11 1/2, 11 5/8. And it's hitting the cold air intake. So we're going to go with 11 3/4. So I'm going to mark it 11 3/4. And 11 3/4. That way both sides are going to be the same. And then I'm going to take those marks and transfer them onto the back side. And then I can connect those dots from this intersecting point here, which is where I scribed it underneath here. So I'm going to go from that mark to this mark up here, and then do the same thing on this side. So these two marks here are right here. So that intersecting point is right there on that corner. So if you can see the line, goes from this point, this intersecting point, to that point. So we're going to cut right along that, and then we'll flip it, do the same thing on the other side. All right, just cut the new piece, put it on there. Now you want to look underneath at the marks that you made before. Make sure that the mark is actually right on this edge on both sides. And if it is, you just want to hold that down, double check. This should be lined up with the center of your steering post, which it is. You don't have to worry about these right now because these are all the same size. So once you get that on, you get your mark underneath on this side's lined up where it needs to be, and the one on this side's where it needs to be. Make sure you're centered on your steering post. Then you can take your pencil and go underneath. Make sure you hold this down tight and just scribe a line. And do the same thing on the other side. A shorter pencil would help because the shock tower is actually in the way. So that's the angle there. So it's actually, I don't know if you can see, it's a little bit off. So I'm just gonna take this one and move it over there. That way it comes out at the point, it comes out nice and even. So you can see, actually move this line. So this was the original line I scribed, but it didn't line up with this line. So I just made it line up with that line. So that line's not getting cut. This is the new cut line right there. So you can see I got this right there. I'm going to put that on the line and clamp the jig down. But because of the way this cut is on this, I have to stop the skill saw right there. I can't just keep going through, obviously, because then I'll cut that end off. So as you can see, I have to run the skill saw like this. So I have to start it in the middle. I'm going to have to plunge cut that to make that happen. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to loosen up the height adjustment, just bring it all the way up, pick up the guard, make sure that the saw's table is up against the jig, and then just plunge cut it. A little windy. Now I'm left with this. So I just have to clean that up with a knife. All right, so that's laid in place. Looks like something. The bat wings are kind of cool. So now I have to determine where I'm cutting this. And that's going to be determined, I think, by the other side. Because I want to go from probably this point to that point. And then I'll give a nice little angle taper. So I'll match the other side. But before I do that, I have to cut out for the muffler. This is, it gets a little tricky. I have to hold the muffler in where I think it's going. And where it is going. I'm just going to slowly start cutting around it. So I'll start here. Do something like that. First cut. So I'm going to lay it in there. Actually, a little bigger than I wanted to be, but again, there's no right, no wrong. Just try to make it look uniform. So I'm going to have to take a little more off of this up around here. As you can see, I'm not tied up against the intake yet, and I'm also not in there. I want that to lay in there without any pressure on it. And right now the muffler is holding that up. So I'm going to go ahead and make that cut. Okay, so I'm almost there. You can see I'm almost tight to that cold air intake, not quite. So you want this panel to kind of be where it's going to be before you start like trying to get like a finished scribe in there. So that's determined by whether or not this is leaning up against the cold air intake or not. And the other determining factor you can tell is if it's out to this point here where it's supposed to be. So it's close. But I'm also touching the exhaust right there. So I'm just going to take a pair of dividers and try and just get a consistent gap around the exhaust. If you don't like the way the cut, it's kind of weird, so just give it a nice smooth arc. Okay, so it's time to cut this panel. So you want to make sure that this is flush. The panel's all flushed up here where it needs to be. Remember, this panel butts into the front panel. And this piece goes on, and make sure that this corner down here is flush. And then you can just mark this. And if you like the way that looks, where the channel comes in, you put another mark there. We'll go back to the saw with the straight edge. We'll connect those dots. And then hopefully that works out on the other side. So what I'm going to do is just double check it. This side should be the same size, same length as the other side. So this one is 25 1/4 from here to here, which determines that mark. So this piece here should be the same. Should be 25 1/4, and it is. So we're going to put that right there. I could just measure 25 1/4, but I want to make sure that this is flush. And again, this panel butts this panel. And I'm going to put a mark right there. I'm wondering if, obviously the other side is out further here, but then I really don't want this sticking out. So I think if I cut this, something like that, I think that'll look all right. It's definitely going to make this look a lot better because I'm cutting out most of this, which is where most of the defect in that scribe is. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and try that out. All right, so that's the right side. And the left side's a little bit longer. It's got more of a taper down towards the bottom, but I think I could live with that. The other thing I could do, if I wanted to make it match the other side, is make the measurement here the same and then cut this whole belly pan down, but you know what? Doesn't bother me that much. So what I want to do now is just kind of make this exhaust cut out a little bit cleaner. Again, with my dividers, go right around it. Clean up this arc a little bit. Yeah, see how that looks. There. It doesn't really matter how big the gap is, as long as it's consistent. It'll look all right. Yep, I think I can go with that. So next thing I'm going to do is nail it all together. All right, I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to nail, I have just a little micro nailer with some 1-inch micro nails. It's only 1/4-inch plywood, so there's not a lot to nail to. So biggest thing is to keep your fingers out of the way. Make sure that top's nice and flush. Throw one nail in it. You are going to get nails that blow through, you know, hook out the side and stuff, but just leave those for now. We'll pull them out later. If you start trying to pull them out now, you're gonna pull this thing apart. Those nails aren't going to hold a lot. Hold the top nice and flush. Keep your fingers out of the way of the nails. No blowouts yet. Put the top piece on. Push that corner up. Now there's first blowout. I'm going to shut the camera off. You don't want to watch me do this. All right, everything's all nailed in. It's still pretty delicate, so just be real careful. I put in a little extra masking tape just to kind of reinforce it and hold it while I pull it off. So the trick is to get it off without trashing it. And then what I'm going to do, have it upside down. There are some blowouts and nails all along here and stuff, but like I said, just leave them for now. Pull them later. What we're going to do is take some PL 3 times stronger premium construction adhesive. It's a polyurethane based glue. I'm going to lay a bead in all these inside corners. Just like caulking. All right, so I got the adhesive in there, and I'm just going to take my finger and just run it down and make sure it's works itself in nice to the joint. You get good adhesion. I just got all my sneaker. You want to get this stuff on your hands, it'll be there for days. Try to smooth it out the best you can too, because we're going to end up coming back over this and putting some fiberglass mesh tape with some epoxy resin on the inside, just on the seams. But the whole outside, I just put one layer of cloth over the whole thing, and I just epoxy it with some West epoxy. And then I just waterproof the whole inside after I just do the seams. And it's held up pretty well for a couple of years. So. The only thing I got left to do is I'm just going to run a bead down the seam that we cut and just squish it in there and let that set up. So with this sitting there, let it set overnight. Come back in the morning, all the glue should do its job. I should be able to take that off and sand it all down. And then it'll be ready for a coat of fiberglass, a little bit of epoxy, and it'll be good to go. Waterproof and keep all the snow out. The glue set up overnight. You can pull this off now. You can really tell the difference in how rigid it is now. Glue bubbles up for some reason. It's not a big deal, but what I'm going to do is, now that everything's dry and I can move this around a little bit, I'm going to pull all the nails out, anything that's sticking out with vice grips, and I'm going to lay like a 3-inch swatch of fiberglass mat, and then I'm going to go over the whole thing with epoxy. And I'm going to do the mat. I'm not going to do epoxy, the fiberglass mat on this part, just on the seams on the inside. And I am going to waterproof this whole thing with epoxy, though. And then on the outside, I'm going to sand all this down, kind of round the corners over. And then I'm going to go over the whole thing with one mat of fiberglass, and then I'm going to epoxy the entire thing. And I'm using the West hardener and the resin. And the combination works great because it gives you, I think it takes probably like a full 48 hours to cure, but I mean, you got like 5 or 6 hours to work with it. Sometimes you have to go back and forth and, push some spots down here and there, but you have plenty of time. All right, so I'm mounting the gas tank. And the first thing I did was I cut a couple of sticks. I cut 3 of them. I got 2 on this side. They're right up underneath the lip, and I just taped them right around the whole tank, and I got 1 on that side. So that way that holds the tank straight, holds it up off the ground. And then the other thing I did was I cut these little metal brackets, and they're from the center of the hole 2 1/4, and it's just 1 1/4 1/8 inch piece of steel. So I'm gonna bolt those right on there underneath. Snug them right up. See that? Now what I'm going to do is, I have this piece of 1/2 inch electrical conduit that I cut. If you cut it nice and tight, it'll hold itself in between the steering post halo, and that way you won't have to put any clamps on it. So what I'm going to do is, these little tabs here are just going to butt weld right to that plate. So I just slide it right up in there until it's nice and tight to that piece of conduit. And then make sure that my gas cap is centered with my steering post so everything lines up. And I can just stand up on the sled too and just kind of eyeball down on it and make sure everything looks straight. Now what I'm going to do is just going to put a couple tack welds down here, welding the flat stock steel right to this 1/2 inch conduit. And then afterwards I'm going to weld the 1/2 inch conduit right into the steering post halo. And that'll be the front mount for the gas tank. I got pieces tacked in up underneath to the bar. It's a little tight getting in there, but you can do it. I didn't mention I did the sticks I use are 7.5. I mean, depending on where you want to put your gas tank, you can change that obviously. So now those are tacked in. I pulled the bolts off those 2 front mounts, and I'm just going to pull that right out. And that's what we got there. So I'm going to pull this whole bar off. And then I'm going to finish weld these up, paint it up, most of it, and then this is going to go back in, and then it's going to get welded in here and welded in here. And then on the back of the tank, we're just going to put one leg. I'm just going to put one leg going down. So we got our front mount all welded in. And then on the back, I just made a little leg. And that's just going to slip right on there. Hold in. Just going to throw a rivet down in here afterwards. And then just bolt these up on the existing mounting bolts. That's it for the gas tank. Now getting pretty close to finishing this one up. I have a lot of wiring. Got to wire the lights up. Got to hook up the fuel line. I got the exhaust is all done. You can see all that, and that's all going to get wrapped with heat tape. Keep the temperatures down underneath the hood. The tank's in. Thing I have to do is I'm going to mount the fuel pump. It's actually going to go right here. And then I'm going to run a pulse line to the top of the valve cover. So if you put that pulse line in like right behind the spark plug and kind of in the center, you should be out of the way of the valves inside. You just got to keep that in mind when you're doing that. But you have to get a little nipple and then drill a hole in that, put the nipple in, and then you can run the line for the diaphragm and the fuel pump. That's it. So this video is actually a little longer than I wanted. I try to keep them around like maybe a half hour, 40 minutes max. So I think this one's going quite a bit over. So I'm going to stop it here. Like I said, pretty much done. I'll probably make another video, try to get all the links up there for you. And I have to still hook up the choke. And the choke's actually kind of complicated because you got to come around this whole thing to hit it right here, because the cable has to pull this way. So I'll probably do that in the next video, and then show you how I hooked up the fuel line. But as far as everything else goes, the wiring and everything, it's pretty straightforward. So I'll see you on the next video.